Hi everybody, here we go, Chapter 5. Welcome to the next unit. We're going to talk about relational maintenance today, specifically that which occurs in families. So let's get started. Let's keep in mind that relationships don't just happen. We have to make them work. And maybe you're really good at this, and so you think relationships just happen. Maybe you do maintenance almost automatically or naturally. Well, that's probably because your family modeled it for you, or you compensate for how your family didn't do it. And actually, it's pretty sophisticated stuff. So we're going to talk about that. So even for families, yes, relational maintenance is something that's often studied in interpersonal relationships and friendships and romantic relationships. And a lot of people might think, well, in your family, you don't need to maintain them. Oh my goodness. Because family relationships are mostly obligatory, out of obligation, involuntary, you don't choose them, you're stuck in them, all the more reason you have to maintain them. You have to work at it so that people realize the person doesn't just have to be in this relationship with me, they want to be in this relationship. So to maintain, as the book says, the quality of a relationship, one must maintain the quality of the communication. Relational maintenance involves keeping your relationship existent, connected, satisfying, and repairing it. So this is not entirely separate from what we talked about before, the rituals, the secrets, the rules, etc. Relational maintenance strategies are listed on page 116 to 119. Now, I am going to talk about these in this order, in this particular order that I think fits nicely with your studying, and it strays a little bit sometimes from the text. So we're going to talk about confirmation, respect. Confirmation and respect must take place before as a baseline for rituals and relational currency, and that includes affection, which we'll talk about later. Rituals is in parentheses here because I talked about it last time a bunch, and so you're not going to see a lot in this exam about that. Relational currency is something that we'll talk about throughout the semester. It's a term used a lot. So first, there's a lot going on this slide. Blue means book. We're going to talk about confirmation a bunch. And again, confirmation is so important because it tells the other person, I want you here, and you. I want you here. I want you also to want to be here. You want you to be here. It's all of these things. It confirms that we all want to be in this relationship and we all want each other to be in the relationship. Okay, so what are the pieces of confirmation? Well, the first, recognition. Again, these work together. Recognition, dialogue, and acceptance work together, but you'll see they get more complex as we move on. So recognition. Recognition is how you demonstrate your willingness to be involved. You show it through your acknowledgement and recognizing that other person. So when you say things like, I'm glad to see you, I missed you, these are ways that you say to that person, hey, I see you there. Also, nonverbal acknowledgement is something as simple as when someone comes into a room, you smile at them, or directing your attention to somebody when they're talking and when they're doing things. In and of itself, recognition is important. Then, once you have that, that's perhaps the simplest, most basic. Now we talk about dialogue. AKA, you can think about this, I think about it as encouraging dialogue. So this is where you invite, propose, and or encourage some conversation. You encourage this other person, now that you've recognized they're there, you let them know, hey, we're open to talk. So one thing that you might explicitly say is, can we talk about this? Or what do you think? Again, this nonverbal recognition that we just talked about now moves to the dyad, and it confirms the verbal. So when you look at someone or go, that's letting them know, come on, let's go, we can talk about it. That is a way that you confirm the importance of that other person and what he or she has to say. Then we have acceptance, and acceptance is profoundly important here. And this is a profound statement by Galvin and Braithwaite, and I almost always forget the third author, poor karma, Byland. So these three authors say, if you feel accepted in a relationship, disagreements do not challenge how you feel in the relationship. That is huge. If you feel that you're accepted, if you feel like, now that you've been recognized and the person's been open to dialogue, if you feel like what you have to bring in is going to be accepted, it's going to be listened to, it's going to be welcomed, then the disagreement may ensue, but you won't feel worse about the relationship because of that disagreement, because you know that you and what you bring to that disagreement is accepted. That doesn't mean that that other person totally agrees with you or the disagreement becomes completely resolved. It means that the disagreement can actually carry on, but you know that what you say is welcomed and valued, and that you're valued for saying it and seen for saying it. Then you're going to be fine. You're not going to be dissatisfied. And that's amazing. That is so amazing. In my own research, I've seen this. So even similarity, which we talked about the first day, is so important for marriage, so important for families. Similarity. Oh, when you're similar, you stay together longer, you're happier. Well, but when we do really good research, we see that acceptance is what's key. Now, acceptance may happen more when you agree all the time. If you see it as similar, it's going to be easier. But gosh, if you totally disagree about something, but you are always letting that other person know, I see you, I like talking with you, I welcome you to talk with me, and I welcome whatever you bring, and the things that you bring to the table, I accept them, and I accept you. You're going to have a good relationship. Okay. So here's some elaboration on acceptance. Really, people say this a lot of times now, you do you. Yeah, you do you. You allow the other person to be him or herself without judgment of that individual. You can judge the things they're talking about wanting to do. You can say, I don't think that's a good idea, or even I think that, but you don't judge that person. You don't say, you're dumb, or I think you didn't think this through. Working to understand that person's perspective. So asking them questions, seeking to know who they are, not whom you want them to be. Woo! That's a tall order. But if you can do this, you're going to be successful. So these are some examples. I love that you told me that. Notice I didn't say I agree with it. I love that you told me that. It's neat how we see it differently, but also the same. And that's also true in relationships. We probably don't see everything differently. We see some things similarly always. I never thought about it that way before. Thanks for telling me about that. All of these show acceptance. So here's a pretty cool thing that you might want to talk about in a discussion question in A. If one learns to love by being loved, then one only learns to confirm by being confirmed, being recognized, encouraging that dialogue and accepted. That's one thought I have. Think about if you agree or not. That would be my just Q&A, and I definitely agree with it, and I would talk about why, but maybe you disagree, and you can talk about why, but if you're going to say why you disagree, you better give a reason why you disagree. You might pick something else to talk about for your DQ&A. Use confirmation in place of rejecting and disconfirming messages. That's our advice in terms of relational maintenance behaviors. You may say, of course I use confirmation. Of course I encourage dialogue. I recognize my partner and I'm accepting of what he or she says. Okay, good. Now you can use those things instead of rejecting. Reality is you've probably done some of this stuff. We all have. We've all been naughty one time or another, but this is naughty. Rejecting. That's when you disregard. Non-acceptance. Saying things like, ugh, you're wrong. You're unacceptable. Woo! Yuck. You may not use that exact language. You may communicate that in other ways. Nonverbals, body language. Disconfirming messages is when you treat the other person as non-existent. These are exclusionary behaviors. Now, this is interesting. You know, in my intergroup research, when I talk about prejudice and how different groups treat and mistreat each other, one of the things that students have a really hard time with is, well, how is like just not doing anything a bad thing? You know, I was always told, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. If you can't be nice, then just don't do anything. Well, I want you to think about this in your relationships. What happens when someone excludes you or just pretends that you are not there? They ignore you. Think about when you were breaking up with somebody, maybe. You worried that they would stop being a close relationship, even stop being a part of your family, and they just stop interacting. That hurts more than anger, doesn't it? It hurts more than someone saying you're wrong. They care so little about you. They don't even say you're wrong. They just don't say anything. You know, it's almost like they don't care. Oh, disconfirming. Woo! You can't get further from relational maintenance than that. That's a naughty behavior. Of course, excluding a family member or getting away from a family member who's abusive and problematic, those things are all not only behaviors we shouldn't judge, but they can be very healthy for a family and for an individual. But what I'm saying here is in terms of relational maintenance, in terms of keeping that relationship, keeping it going, when you want to maintain, that's when the disconfirming messages are naughty. I want to make that real clear. I'm not saying you're naughty if you disconfirm, just period. That's not what I'm saying. If you want to maintain relationships and you're rejecting and disconfirming, you're not going to maintain that relationship. You're not going to maintain it and have it be healthy. The absence of the positive is its own negative, okay? So I want to make this point really clear. It's harmful to the relationship and may also be harmful to the receiver. Just because you don't do the good things, that's a negative thing. If you're never accepting, if you're never acknowledging, if you're never, recognizing, or you're recognized very little, that's a problem. Okay. Respect is another component. It includes equality, mutuality, and caring supportiveness. Really, I think about respect as lifting up the other party. So even though, even if you have a horizontal, when you have a horizontal relationship, it means you're on an equal playing field. And you might think, but in a family, we have these hierarchies. That's what system theory says, Christy. It says that we have a hierarchy. One person's here and one person's down here. Parents do the rulemaking, so they're above kids. An older sibling has more authority in the family. They're above the younger sibling. Okay, sorry. All of that is true. Sorry about that. All of that is true, but when you lift up a lower ranking party and make it a horizontal relationship and how you communicate to them, that's respect. Just like you like when your teachers respect you, talk to you without implying that you're lesser. That doesn't mean you might have don't have less experience or maybe know less of the scholarship. You might, but that doesn't make you less of a person. So respect means we lift you up so that we're all on the same playing field when we're interacting. And that can be a tall order. Respect's hard to deliver all the time. So you better work at it. Ensuring that the dialogue, which is a component of confirmation, is on the same playing field. Talking with each other, not at each other. Nobody likes to be talked to or talked at. Talk with each other, okay? Families do have hierarchy. Keep that in mind. So it makes it tricky business. Work at it. Respect. Respect children, even though they're lower ranking. You better respect them. Don't underestimate them. Treat them with respect. Parent-child relationship. For early years, parents drive the maintenance. So now I'm just going to talk about some of the trends in the maintenance literature. Your book talks a lot about parent-child. I want you to keep in mind that things shift at college, and we see a kind of role swap at midlife when children are sometimes taking care of children. Think about yourselves. How do you share in the responsibility now of maintaining your relationship with your parents? Do you share, or do your parents do most of the work? What do you do to maintain it? We'll return to this once we cover some common topics. For your discussion Q&A, you might think about when you maintain, how much do you talk about or learn about your parent, not just his or her perspectives on life. Now, many of my students, we talk last time about, they say, oh, we're just like the Gilmore Girls, or we're so close, we're like peas and carrots. Okay, well, how much do you know about your parent then? Or are they doing all of the maintenance? The literature suggests that the more you're both doing it, the better. Siblings. So Dr. Myers, who's a faculty member here, you may have had him in class before. He's awesome. He's done a lot of research on siblings and relational maintenance. We know that sisters do more of the relational maintenance, and that what the sisters do actually enhances the entire batch of siblings. Sisters seem to be so powerful at present. This might change as gender dynamics change. But a sister's so powerful that if you have the presence of one sister, the whole batch, could be 8 brothers, are going to be closer. It enhances the relationship of everybody. Systems approach, right? When you have 8 brothers and no sister, you're not going to have that as much closeness. Empirically speaking, it's not going to be as enhanced. But again, I think this will change as men are just more involved in relationships. Closeness corresponds with relational maintenance. Maintenance behaviors are more strategic than routine. You got to think about it. You got to work at it. And shared activities and responsibilities support, these are all talked about in the chapter. That's why they're blue here. In committed couples, including marriage, we do see that there are some serious drops in marital satisfaction. This comes from the disenchantment that your book talks about. You have all these ideals, and then you think your partner's going to maintain the relationship. She doesn't. So the first year after marriage, this is a big old drop in satisfaction. This also happens if you're living together and not married. The data is very comparable, so something to remember when you're thinking cohabiting and marriage are so different. Not in this way. First year of marriage or first year living together, satisfaction, plummets. Fourth year of marriage, we see it dropping some more. The first year after your first child, we see a drop in satisfaction. And we also see a drop at the 7th year of marriage. You may have heard the expression a 7-year itch, which implies that at 7 years, partners are more likely to cheat on each other. That is empirically supported. There is a small but significant trend. Now, this doesn't mean that in your first year of marriage, your 4th year of marriage, your first year after first child, or the 7th year, you're just miserable and it's not worth getting married. What it means is these tend to be declines. So if you're smart, you will be really cognizant of your relational maintenance, your RM, and you'll fulfill it. You'll do it. If you do it, then you're going to buffer the things that naturally come with having a first kid and being exhausted and not getting sleep and being more irritable, and hurting physically. So parents it makes sense that you'd be less satisfied in your marriage at this time. Your life is harder. It's a big transition being married. These are all transitions. They're all tough times. In 7th year, we'll talk about with affection, some of the feelings that you feel from lust and initial attraction, they've gone to the wayside. So you really need to do that relational maintenance. So what are the secrets? People say, what are the secrets to a happily married life? Come on. These aren't secrets. They're skills. So for couples, we see all of these skills. We see all of these skills. So perceptions of what you're doing and what your partner's doing are interdependent. So when you think you're doing a good job with your maintenance, and they think they're doing a good job, and you think they're doing a good job, and they think you're doing a good job, all of these things are what really help that couple. Positivity, openness, assurances, and stories that we've talked about really help with this, and we talk about that more in the aging class. For positivity, let me bop up here a minute. Gottman talks about how you should use 5 for every 1 negative comment. That's particularly in a conflict. So think about how hard that is. Think about what that means. When you're engaged in a conflict, you should say 5 positive things about him or her and their ideas for every 1 negative. That's how you maintain relationships. 3 if it's not an intense conflict. 3 will do you, okay? Openness, open discussion about positives and the negatives in the relationships, assertions, affection, commitment, things that imply a future. Understanding of that person, your forgiveness, apologies are hugely important. Networks. So we see this spill out of our relationship, and when support is shared with the outward network, that also helps. The outward network, the friends and family, can actually support the maintenance. Relationship talk. We see this as less pointed than openness. So it's an openness, but it's very specific about the relationship. So things like, we're raising good kids. Those are really great. It's a type of openness and positivity that's really targeted at the relationship themselves. What we are doing, we're co-parenting. Self-disclosure is also incredibly important. You see this throughout our literature, right? The more you self-disclose, the better your relationships are. And also sharing tasks, doing stuff together, chores, bills, sharing. Good. So, in closing today, I want you to just think a little bit about long-distance relationships, because that's something that we don't talk about a lot. And a lot of the things we're talking about, you can tell something as simple as recognition. I mean, that's when someone walks into a room, you look up and you go, oh, you're here. And it's important. But when someone is 10,000 miles away, for example, how do you do those things? It's tricky. And we know some stuff about it, but not a whole lot. We do know that long-distance dating couples are more satisfied, but what about committed couples? We know less about those. One of the reasons we think long-distance couples are so satisfied is that they don't have what I call bathroom time. They don't have fights in the bathroom or see each other with their retainers or their eyebrow wax. right? They don't see the parts. They're not going to have as many little conflicts. When they're together, it's like a honeymoon every time. It's exciting. It's romantic. So they're happier than close distance couples. But what about people that have been together a long time and they don't want the honeymoon? They want consistency. They want dependability. So relational maintenance is harder for these couples, and the presence is possible. You talk about that in your media classes, but the physical component is very crucial, and we'll talk more about physical connection in the next unit. Okay, so I am going to take myself off. You don't have to see my face anymore, and I am going to show you a video clip that I think addresses some of this, and I have not seen the movie yet, but I bet it's pretty good. Okay, so thanks so much and enjoy this, this ad. Oh, you may not be able to get rid of me. Here we go. Coming at you. And
en Estados Unidos.
Estás guapa, ¿eh?
Dance with me, my old friend. Once before we go.
It's Sunset Boulevard.
Muy bien, lo que complementa tu todo.
Let's go out.
We never have to go.
1, 2, 3.
Among the chandeliers. And nothing matters when we're dancing.
Solo tu pareja con tu dinero. Te podemos hacer juntos, ¿no?
Be we in Paris or in London. Nothing matters when we're
Cada mañana, tu ropa aquí, en cualquier esquina, me encuentro alguna mierda que me recuerda a ti. Todo, como esto. Por ejemplo.
nothing matters when we're dancing. Be we in Paris or in London. Nothing matters when we're dancing. Nothing matters when we're